Chris here again, and in this one, right, we actually worked on this calculator before where we used Getx as the state management. So I thought through it and I said, let me make a version of using RiverPod, because maybe probably some people actually are using RiverPod and you would want to know how you can actually do that. And consider that we're going to actually be combining two state management. So we're using RiverPod right here and also Getx. So that's another trick you can actually understand in case there are some use cases where you need to actually combine these two state management packages, right? So let's start from the home screen here. If you're here, you can see that I have provider scope wrapped around Get Material app. So you might be wondering, is this okay? In the long run, you might not really need to do this whole hustle, but Get Material app is just the same thing as Material app, just that they made some little modifications in between the widget and just to add extra stuffs. All right, kind of little customization, but inside it still returns the material application. So that's why we are considering that, but because we need to have Getx also in our project. All right, and you can see we're still returning the old calculator, which I now labeled at Getx 1.0, right? So you can see that here, fix lab, and our calculator still works. So if you have this times 3, you can see that we still have this. So let me just quickly pull up the calculator we used to test before, and let's see what different that makes. So we have like 8965 by 3. You have 26895, right? So that's it. So let's quickly head to the one with RiverPod. So you can see Fix Lab RiverPod 1.0. So I'm still gonna do, let's say 4, 5, 6 times 200. Let's see, 91200. So let's do that. 4, 5, 6 times 200. So 91200. So you can see that the Getx and the RiverPod all works. So in all of that, let's quickly jump into the code. All right. So the only changes I made in the home screen, that is in the main.dat, is actually wrapping this material app with provider scope so that we can actually have access to the provider to be able to actually have our app receive data from that. So you can see I've actually added a new folder here. I like grouping this stuff this way so we can have control. So the calculator RiverPod, right, has its own controller. Its index is just for us to export. It has its states and then it has its views. The state is very important, right? That's where we need to really first take a look at. So opening up the state, and this is what I have. You can see it probably has a little line of code, but some people can still argue that maybe I just leave that to you to choose, because I think all of them have their specific powers, right? Now, so you can see we have string result and have expression. So, and then we're initializing. Most importantly, I want you to understand that we're actually extending equitable here, unlike our state in the other package is just pure data class, nothing to extend. So for us to use that, also you need to be able to add these two packages. Sorry, because in fact, what you need to do is basically copy the whole project as is from here, create a new folder, copy this whole thing, then bring it to this new place, and then be able to modify it with these new changes that we have, right? So you extend it with equitable, and then we'll have two fields here, result and expression, which is our result and expression. Then we are creating a new constructor here, which is defaulted to empty. So our result and our expression is going to be empty by default. Object. So we are using our RiverPod state is actually what I call it, and copy width is the name, and we are passing result, which is nullable, and expression, which is nullable, and we're returning a new result and also a new expression as provided. But if they're not provided, we are falling back to the results as is from the old member variable here. So at the end of the day, we're going to return the props, and it's going to be a list of props. So the depending number of fields we have here, we're going to return it as the state. You understand? So that's just how our state is going to be. So if we have more fields here, we're going to always add them to this list of props. And remember that the props is they actually get, so it's easy for us to get these values, right? So that's what our state has. And then let's quickly go to the controller. Yeah, the controller has almost what we had before, right? Just that we have removed a lot of things. So I have here, I'm now extending not Getx controller this time around, but calculator controller RiverPod is extending state notifier, and we're using the state, the RP state that we just get off from here. All right, so you have to use a type state. This state notifier is actually from the Flutter package itself. All right, not from RiverPod, but RiverPod has it inside. Then our constructor, remember that by default we need to have a state, so we're calling super, we're passing our state to it, which will eventually be an empty state at that point, because it has to the default of our state is going to be empty. All right, just like we saw, once you construct a new RP state, is going to be defaulted to to empty, sorry. All right, so that is almost like what we have our controller in the previous version having on init. So on init here we are making it 0 or empty that way. All right, so the same thing we had, just that our state is different, so we're calling state. This state is actually coming from the state notifier provider, so you can see void set. All right, and then it takes our every state value, you can see that. So the current state of the state notifier, updating this variable, we synchronously call the listener. So once we do this, everywhere that is listening to the state is going to be updated. So we're calling state.copy with, and we're passing result, because it's the only result that we want to update at this time, instead of updating the whole both result and expression. So that's what the copy with function here is doing. All right, so the same thing is what we had before. So if we want to clean, we just need to clean everything. So we're updating our state and we're passing our result to be empty, just like when we're constructing for the first time. The expression is going to be empty this way as well. All right, and then for us to actually backspace or clean, so we're taking the state and we're creating a new value of expression, and we're saying get the expression, the substring from the first index to the length, then -1. So just remove 1 from here. So that's it, the last actually. So on equal press, we are passing the state.expression. Remember that our expression is actually public, right, from the props. So we always can get that from the state itself. All right, so you can see that we have here where we are doing our appending. So our state is copy with, also we're creating expression at this time, and we're appending our state.expression with a new label, and that's the same thing we're doing for this state.expression or copy with expression. We're appending our expression by default. All right, so that's how we'll be able to get these numbers. So you can see it's appending, right, with whatever label that we actually had. You can see that. All right, so that's what this does. And eventually, to expose our state, we are now calling we're using state notifier provider at this point in time, because that's what RiverPod provides us. RiverPod uses providers, right, which is we need to expose an instance of our state notifier here that will give us access to everything that is inside. All right, so we're saying we call it a calculator provider is equals to state notifier provider, and it takes type of calculator provider, which is the controller, and the state. All right, and then we return a reference, which we in turn return. So you can see it's not something very strange. Views, when we've actually exposed our calculator provider, let's quickly get into the views and see what changes we had there. All right, coming up here, we had just yeah, so on top of our button, right, so we are doing we made a change from top, because originally we are using get view, which is from the Getx. All right. So, but right now, because we're using RiverPod, we're using consumer widget. So consumer widget gives us access to add this second field to our build function, which is widget ref. So from widget ref now we are getting a provider. We are saying find a provider is equals to ref.watch. So we're watching the calculator provider, and then our provider down here we can now use that to do whatever we want to do. So here for on tap, when we are watching for changes, but when we want to actually perform an actions, because we want to, as at the point where we touch this we are listening for the notifier to update whatever. So we're saying read calculator provider.notifier dot update press state, and then we're passing our label to it. All right, you can see how simple that is. So widget ref is from here. So ref.read, that's what we're using to access it. Once you have widget ref and you've already extended consumer widgets. Consumer widget is just like Getx, OBX that we use in actually watching in the view side. All right. So in the result part of our so you can see we have our provider.results, and we also have provider.expression. As it seems like this is more simpler, you understand, but I still like Getx, so but it's basically depends on use cases. It doesn't mean that you can actually mix up these guys. So that's what we have here. As you can see, we have FixLab RiverPod, and I've been able to show you this is actually our calculation. So if you see, if I multiply this by 9 and do equals, so you can see how crazy that is. So the idea of this is just to show you how you actually do the same thing using RiverPod instead of using only Getx. But Getx is also very nice, right? So you can see how our state is using OBS, all right? So, but in this one, we are extending executable, and we're using this to actually update our, and then in the view parts, we are using OBX. We're using OBX as something that we're using to observe. But in the case of RiverPod, we are using consumer widget. So that's it, guys. And I'm going to see you in the next one.